During the Cold War, the world lived in constant looming threat of nuclear winter. The Soviet Union and the United States had the two biggest stockpiles of nuclear weapons in the world. But the list of countries in possession of nukes would grow to include the United Kingdom, China, India, Pakistan, and several others. But while the world was dealing with nukes in America and Europe, South America was building its own nuclear arsenal, sitting on large uranium mines, facing international backlash over the apartheid, and its neighboring countries constantly at war. South Africa dove straight into the Cold War. Little is known about South Africa's nuclear program. What is known is that the country had 6 nuclear warheads, working on a 7th, and that they were likely collaborating with other countries. In 1948, the National Party came into power and installed the apartheid. Government sanctioned and legalized racial discrimination against the majority black population. The government created the South African Atomic Energy Corporation, and quickly started formulating plans to utilize the abundant uranium mines located throughout the country. By 1961, South Africa's first nuclear power plant, Palindaba, was established outside Pretoria. The plant was used to begin a uranium enrichment program, as well as establish plutonium capabilities for the country. Several components, including over 5 tons of heavy water, were donated by the United States. But it wasn't until 1969 that South Africa's nuclear weapons program started to take shape. There are no public records of what exactly the men worked on, and it's unknown what became of the nuclear program from this point on until 1976. In 1976 and 77, construction began in the Kalahari Desert on 2 shafts, both stretching over 385 meters, over 12,000 feet. These 2 shafts were planned to be test sites for South Africa's first nuclear weapons. By 1977, the government had created a gun-type nuclear device, but they didn't have enough enriched uranium, which was crucial to sustain a nuclear detonation. A cold test, meaning detonation without the uranium, was planned later that year. However, a Soviet spy plane flying over the site picked up the silos, and in a rare sign of cooperation, the Soviets shared the intel with the United States. That intel was leaked into the public, and within days, South Africa was under intense political pressure from around the world. South Africa would fold to the pressure and cancel the planned tests. Later in 1993, Wayne de Villiers, Vice President of South African Atomic Energy Board, admitted that the site was intended to be used to test the weapon, but after it became exposed to international governments, the silos were sealed and the tests were abandoned. But South Africa wasn't giving up on testing its nuclear weapons, not yet. On September 22, 1979, 2 flashes of light were detected by the Vela space satellite off the coast of Prince Edward Islands, approximately 1,000 miles off the coast of mainland South Africa. Air samples were taken by the American Air Force, but a decisive conclusion cannot be found. It is believed that South Africa, with the aid of Israel, detonated a nuclear device there. South Africa and Israel had a long-standing relationship, especially where nuclear materials were concerned. Dating back to 1977, South Africa traded 50 tons of uranium in exchange for 30 grams of tritanium, and as late as the mid-1980s, the 2 countries collaborated on development of ballistic missiles capable of delivering nuclear warheads. To this day, neither the Israeli or South African governments acknowledge the incident. However, in 1994, Didier Gerhardt, a Soviet spy and formerly the commander of a South African naval base, reportedly stated, "Although I was not directly involved in planning or carrying out the operation, I learned unofficially that the flash was produced by an Israeli-South African test, codenamed Operation Phoenix. The explosion was clean and was not supposed to be detected, but they were not as smart as they thought, and the weather changed, so the Americans were able to pick it up." Other possible parties responsible include Israel acting alone, India or Pakistan given the proximity, or even France as they lay claim to the uninhabitable Kerguelen Islands, though these possibilities seem unlikely. Although the first likely test was successful, the government back home was under more pressure than ever. With a civil war breaking out in Angola, economic sanctions from around the world, and civil unrest and rioting at home, the old apartheid system was beginning to crumble, and the old government with it. In August 1989, F.W. de Klerk was elected leader of the National Party of South Africa, and quickly became president. De Klerk had been strongly conservative his entire career, openly supporting this apartheid system and segregation. But by the time he came into power, his political leanings had fundamentally changed. Facing so much pressure from foreign powers and within South Africa, de Klerk saw the need for change. In his first public speech after winning an election, he called for the end of racism and the apartheid in South Africa. He lifted a ban on the African National Congress, a major left-leaning political party run primarily by the black population, and freeing Nelson Mandela from prison. Together, the two helped put an end to the apartheid system in South Africa. But while negotiations were underway to end the racial segregation, de Klerk was also making sweeping changes to the nuclear weapons program, primarily disbanding it. War in nearby Angola was coming to an end thanks to a peace treaty signed between Cuba, Angola, and South Africa. Due to the fear of a domino effect of communism taking over the African continent, de Klerk ordered the nuclear weapons program scrapped, and the country's nuclear stockpile of 6 warheads be completely dismantled. Removing nuclear weapons from the region would, in theory, instantly lend South Africa credibility and would help build peace and stability in the region. In 1991, South African Ambassador to the United States Harry Schwarz signed the Non-Proliferation Treaty, designed to stop the spread of nuclear weapons and help build peaceful nuclear energy options. 3 years later, on August 19, 1994, the International Atomic Energy Agency conducted inspections of nuclear sites in South Africa and found that all 6 devices had indeed been dismantled. During the late 80s, South Africa's nuclear weapons were arguably a bigger issue than the apartheid in terms of the world stage. A nation that got its independence relatively recently had just acquired nuclear weapons, and they were collaborating with other nuclear powers. But since the nuclear issue wasn't necessarily common knowledge to the public at large, it's easy to see how history has moved on. Not to mention the apartheid was coming to an end and Nelson Mandela was released from jail and, of course, went on to become president. In 1993, de Klerk and Nelson were both awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for ending the apartheid. But what they did for the nuclear landscape of the world should have merited a second prize. South Africa remains the only country in history to willingly dismantle its entire nuclear stockpile, and it's one of the world leaders in using nuclear energy for peace.